Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us again for another episode of Campbell Talk. I am your host, Richardo Jackson, and today we're going to be talking to Dr. J.R. Thicklin, who's the minister here in the Palm Beach County area, and we're going to be talking about the work that he's doing, what resource he has available, how you can access those resources, and also just kind of like some informational stuff about where you can go and get tested and know your HIV status. It is Black History Month, so happy Black History Month, and we're going to celebrate all year round. 28 days just isn't enough. And also, let's not forget that Black history is American history. Peep that. And also, it earlier this month we celebrated Black HIV/AIDS Awareness Day, and that's where we try to galvanize all of our Black and Brown folks to go and get tested. Know your HIV status. It's important. Getting care, staying care, learn if you're not using condoms, you're not protecting yourself, all of that stuff. And so we want to extend that for the entire month, make it, it's a Black awareness, everything. So while we learn our history and understand that we stand on the shoulders of greatness, we also need to make sure that we, this generation and the generations to come, maintain that greatness. And we can't if we're not here. So you need to know your status. You need to, if you're negative, you can get on PrEP, which can help you to stay healthier longer, stay negative and healthier longer. And if you are living with HIV, take your meds, see your doctor regularly, and stay healthier longer. We need you. I need you. Our community need you. All right. So I'm going to jump to this intro, and then when we come back, we'll have Reverend Dr. J.R. Thicklin on, and we're going to jump into that conversation soon. Thank you for joining us. Please like and share. Invite your friends to get on in here, and see you in a minute. Hi, Reverend Dr. J.R. Thicklin. How are you?
I'm doing great, Richardo. It's good being here with you this evening.
Awesome. As always, if you're watching this and you have questions, please feel free to ask your questions. We will put them on the screen, and if we can get to all of them, we'll get to all of them during the show. And we'll try to answer as many as we can and point you in the right direction as much as we can. So, hi, welcome. Happy Black History Month.
Happy Black History Month to you as well.
All right. So tell us a little bit. Tell us a little bit about yourself. When we did your video, our intro video, we have your bio out there, and I know a lot of people have seen those videos. But tell our viewers a little bit about you and the work that you're doing.
Well, thank you so very much, and once again, thank you for having me today. I'm Reverend Dr. J.R. Thicklin, and as you said, I'm a Palm Beach County resident. I've been here. It'll be 40 years to come August 3rd, and just to say that when I came here, I did not come to stay. I mean, but I've been here since that time. And so I work over that period of time, not only as a clergy and a minister, but actually as an advocate, an activist inside of many different areas. One of the areas is definitely the area folks have known me by for nearly 30 years of it has been domestic violence and sexual violence. And then later on, we began to deal with human trafficking, sex trafficking, as well as dealing with the areas of fatherlessness and reentry, incarceration. But one small fact that might not be, most people would not know, is that the area of addressing HIV/AIDS was something that I embarked upon very early on. As a matter of fact, I took my first course training in 1983, it was, going on 84. And at that time, we wasn't even calling it HIV. We was just talking about AIDS at that time. And I took it. I was this young guy. I'm quite sure I was every bit of 19, going on 20. And I was working at a hospital, and I was going to school. And, they had it up there about trainings. And I thought I would take the training. When I got there, I realized I was the only non-medical professional that was there, but it intrigued me greatly. Later on, as life would have it, many years later, I began to work with a project that dealt with the intersection between domestic violence and HIV, because we began to understand that a lot of victims of domestic violence, oftentimes, they was there because of not only reckless behavior of their partner, but oftentimes intentional coercive sex and coercive reproduction even. And so that led us to understanding where those two major issues intersected. My work as a clergy inside of this has always been very interesting, because as many would know, that the church did not exactly get on board with this whole AIDS and HIV thing at first. After we got through peeling back the layers and calling it God's punishment and retribution and all those things there, we realized that people was dying, in that the God that we serve is a God of love and a God of compassion. So while we was on one end, meaning the church as a whole, really complaining and playing God and saying this is God's judgment, we realized that we wasn't doing God's work. we wasn't being compassionate. We wasn't reaching out. We wasn't being what we're called to be. And so, with that being said, everything that I do and I've done is all centered around three major premises: it's healing, it's education, it is empowerment, but with one goal of transformation. And so that's what I do. I'm a transformer. So back in the year 2000, I started an organization called Destiny by Choice, a nonprofit. And Destiny by Choice has been on that front line of empowering lives and shaping destinies of those impacted by domestic violence. We talk about domestic and sexual violence, empower those affected by domestic and sexual violence, fatherlessness, and other social determinants in our communities. And therefore, it causes us to do a lot of work. And so I'm not what you call your traditional behind the pulpit only pastor. I'm a marketplace pastor. I'm out in the fields. I'm out in the community. I'm
Mm.
educating and empowering. And so it is with what we do with our program called Project Cease, which deals with the domestic violence, not domestic violence, HIV and PrEP inside of it. And so any given moment, we're wearing different hats, because in fact, we understand that at the end of the day, our community must have people that will come together and galvanize for the greater good. And so I came in the night on roller skates after attending two different, if you would, rallies and demonstrations today, dealing with Truth Matters and and standing up against some of the crazy legislation that is trying to come forth that does more harm than good. And I believe that that's the place for the clergy. I think clergy should be very, very much on the front lines in addressing issues and matters. I always tell people I'm not God, and I don't play him on TV neither. And so, but what I can do is be his hands and his instrument of love and compassion. And so, in a nutshell, I'll say this to you: I've made my life inside of addressing social ills and looking out for the least, the lost, and the left out. And I've loved every minute of it, and I will continue to do this work. And because we do believe that we are instruments that is used to heal and to make whole.
Absolutely. And you know what? It's so refreshing to hear a pastor, a particular black pastor, talking about that. I'm not trying to, bash anybody or whatever, but it almost felt like, the church had stepped away from advocacy and activism and just kind of like being at the forefront of those, still giving love, still giving support, but still also standing for justice and standing in the gap on social issues that are adversely impacting our communities. And so I don't know, it's within Black History Month, I feel like, can we rekindle that fire a little bit and
Exactly.
even more?
Yeah, you hit it right on the head. One thing I failed to say, Ricardo, I was born and raised in Selma, Alabama. So I'm from a historical city, and in the time of my upbringing, we're talking about the heels of the civil rights movement. You're talking about the Bloody Sunday March from Selma to Montgomery. You're talking about people like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. being there, but even more so, the people that I was raised by and raised around, like the late Reverend Dr. Frederick Douglass Reese, who was not only a local pastor and minister, but he was an activist. He was actually my principal in junior high school. And though I was living history, I had no idea until I was much older the impact they made. It was Reverend Dr. Frederick Douglass Reese who wrote and contacted Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to come and stand with this march. It was the Dr. Reese who was the president of the Teachers Association and led protests and march when people was being marginalized. And then it was people like Miss Amelia Boynton and others who we now read about in history books that were people that influenced my life. And so I come from a place where I saw the church be very strong inside of advocacy. I
Mm.
saw clergy who actually stood up for injustices. I saw clergy stand up for the least, the lost, and the left out. So I come from that type of childhood where this was very natural. And you think about it, the days before we had cell phones and technology and all those
Right.
things, but all it took was news, word of mouth to get around about an issue, an injustice, or whatever. And before you knew it, there was a meeting happening at somebody's church, and it would be large turnout because we understood the fact that not only were we better together, I know we think that's a 2000 or 21st century term, no, but they realized it was better together. And they also understood the fact that, listen, until we all, until we all are free, none of us are free. And
Yep.
and Dr. King infused something inside of us when he talked about even healthcare. When he said injustice in healthcare is the most inhumane injustice of them all. And so, where should the voice of the church be? The voice of the church should be about those issues. It is the voice of God. It is talking about those that are least lost and left out. And the scriptures are so full and so filled with what happens. You know, when we approach situation of people being marginalized, when we approach situation where people are being treated in ways that is not humane, we learn the fact that we have a call. And all I try to do is continue to perpetuate that call and to empower others along the way to recognize they have a voice. They don't have to have a title, they have a voice.
Yep.
Because as Dr. King said, listen, anyone can be great
Mm.
because anyone can serve. And I love the part where he says you don't have to have a college degree to serve. You don't have to make your subject and verb and your predicates agree to serve. All you need is a willing heart and a heart full of love, and be out there and serve. And so that's what we're trying to raise up new servant
Yeah.
leaders.
Absolutely. I think we're at a critical point right now where that is so needed, and it's almost like like you got to go back to the old days and pick some of that up and bring it forward a little bit and say, okay, how do we push forward? Now, in keeping with that too, we have where in your intro you mentioned like how we need to be more proactive and talk about HIV in all these
Right.
different spaces. So what do you think are some of the reasons why clergy or faith leaders um, are having such a hard time with incorporating that as part of their teachings, as part of their service to the community in some capacity?
Well, I probably can't speak for all of them, but let me answer that by saying this, that there's a scripture in Hosea that says, my people perish for a lack of knowledge. And so sometimes we can be so fixated on what we know that we're not open to learning more.
Mm.
I do believe that we learn, the more we learn and we grow. We learn and we become knowledgeable. Because, in the early beginning of HIV/AIDS, we talked about the pushback that came from the church. But let's make it clear that then the church began to come around with programs like SHIP that came around that was often led by churches and led by the faith communities. And those were the ones that were courageous enough to say, rather than to argue about theological doctrine, let's look at what the spirit of the scripture says. And inside of that, we were talking about love and compassion. Many struggle because of the fact of they don't want to seem as if they're endorsing what they consider uh, ungodly behavior. And often, I understand that to a certain degree, but I often say, don't miss the message inside of what the mission. In other words, don't miss the mission because you misinterpret the message. And
Mm.
what do I mean by that? I'm often asked the question, how would I treat certain people that I would encounter, whether it was because of their orientation or their skin color, what they subscribe to? And I would say to them, ultimately, my first line of work is to serve. It's to serve with love and compassion. Because let me tell you something. If I was in cardiac arrest and could not breathe, I'm going out. I don't get a chance to have a litmus test of who was willing to come and try to save my life. I can't look at them and say, "Oh, you're not black enough," or are you Catholic, or what are you? Are you Protestant, or are you? No, no, no. Because what I need there is not a denomination.
Mm.
What I need there is an action. I need love. I need compassion. I need someone who's going to be that good Samaritan, who finds me in a situation where I've been robbed and left for dead, and they take me, they bandage up my wounds, and they put me on their beast and make sure I'm taken care of. I think that we have to keep that lesson in mind with the church when it comes to HIV/AIDS. When we come to any disease that may be transmittable.
Absolutely, and I love your message that don't miss the mission
Hmm.
because of the message. And I
Hmm.
and I think that is so important because everyone is just so focused on this message that they forget that there's a whole mission that needs to
Absolutely.
happen. And so, people are at all different stages, different walks of life, culture, creed, nationality, sexual orientation, gender, all of that stuff. And at the core of all of that, we are all humans.
At the end of the day, we are. And you think about it, Richardo, you said something that struck something, and that is this. Although you said we're all human, you know what's amazing to me? There's sometimes I just observe nature, whether they're animals or whatever. And it's amazing to me that certain animals can see another animal hurt and will have compassion to go to assist it. And you think if they have the instinctive quality to understand, look, this is an injury to help, why is it that that's not more common amongst us? And sometimes the injury is not necessarily a physical injury. It
Hmm.
could be where I am right now, injury. It could be practices that I've done because that's the only thing I've known, injury. It could be the fact of the matter that, you could do a whole lot of things wrong, for a long time. It doesn't make it right. But it
Right.
takes one thing, I can abuse my privileges. I can abuse things. But what it takes for me to correct that action oftentimes is love. It takes love, it takes instruction. It takes that type of lift in our lives. And I think that's what we have to be about inside of how we handle things. We have to speak truth in love. We have to be able to reach out to those that are hurting. Because I'm going to tell you something. Life is a journey.
Mm.
It's not a destination, it's a journey. And we don't know where in that journey we are encountering people. Just like when people encountered us. I haven't always been who I am. There is a chapter or chapters in my life where I was still becoming. I
Mm.
was still being developed. And I'm so glad that people did not make a full-fledged judgment on me and where I was. Because where I was where I was, but it did not speak to what I would become. And I think we have to always look at life from that perspective. I don't know what chapter of your life I meet you at. I may meet you at a chapter of where you feel rejected, downtrodden, abused. I may meet you at a chapter of your life where you feel hopeless and helpless. I might meet you at a chapter of your life where you've been homeless. But that's the chapter that I was introduced to you at. The question that we have to always ask ourselves, if we're really true about life, is what is my assignment in this person's life at this time? I might not be assigned to be there forever, but for this period of time I'm there. What is my assignment? What is it that I'm supposed to do now? Because I promise you, I sometimes laugh because you know what? The guy who came to South Florida at with less than 20 days before he turned 18 years old, man, when I look back over that, coming from that person to who I become, I'm quite sure there are people who met me back then that probably could not have seen what the future held. And we talk, we laugh now, and it looks like, man, you did all right. But see, they don't understand. Some of them met me in a chapter where I didn't have law, where I didn't have access to things. I did not have an influence. Or they met me in a chapter where they have no idea, where there was a few homeless nights, a few nights that I had to eat by candlelight. And not because I was being romantic, because there was no lights. And yet it's still, that is part of the journey. And I say that to people, whether, we're dealing with folks who have been habitual in their behavior and practicing risky behavior. That's part of their journey. That's where they might be right now. What if my assignment is to be able to intervene, to empower, to educate, to instruct, to love them right out of their basement, to love them right out of that place of feeling depressed and rejected? What if that's my assignment? But the other part of that is, what if I miss my assignment because I'm too busy trying to examine the package that the object of my assignment is? I don't want to miss the mission because of the message. And when we begin to operate that way, we can understand people grow, things grow. Whatever we nurture, it grows. And so we have to see ourselves as being nurturers, nurturing inside of people, nurturing them. People are broken sometimes. Sometimes people's behaviors are directly tied to their brokenness inside of what they've been rejected of done. And I've learned that over the years, that not to make what I call a value judgment, because I don't know. I don't know their story. But I do know one thing. If they were to write their story, I want my part of that story that is written to say, when he saw me, he recognized me, he acknowledged me. He did not judge me, but he lifted me. He encouraged me. He even instructed me. But I have no doubt about that he cared for me. Because at the end of the day, people may not remember everything that you say, but they definitely will remember how you made them feel. And we have to keep that in mind.
Listen, this is already so powerful. I mean, when you said that people have met you at different spaces and different times, and in your becoming, I think that is so pivotal for where we are and how we see the world around us. That we also have to understand that the same, and I don't understand sometimes how it just kind of like get away from people, right? Because like everyone goes through this process of becoming the person that they are today. And some people have had some lows, some people have had some highs and all of that, and yet still people tend to forget people tend to forget that they also had a past, they also have a history.
Absolutely.
And it's like, now you're holding, you can't, and then also you can't take your criteria for yourself and hold other people accountable to that when they're not even on the same street. They're not even in the same neighborhoods at time. But we hold people accountable for the rules in our gated community.
Yes.
Outside of the gated community.
Exactly.
And so it's important that we have to understand that the first thing that we need to focus on is love. How do we love?
Absolutely.
How do we give love? How do we share love? And sometimes that's all that is needed to save someone's life.
It happens so much, Richardo, because this is what happens. You take a child who's been rejected, say a child who feels abandoned, a child who feels rejected, feels that no one cares. Maybe they have not been with their biological father or mother or whoever, and they feel that way. They walk with that. That's become the theme in their mind. And why don't anyone love me? Why am I being rejected? And it's amazing what happens when perhaps that father all of a sudden reaches out, or they reach out to that father, and that father becomes loving and acceptance and said, listen, I'm here for you. I know that I wasn't there before, and I was going through my own stuff, but I want you to know that I love you, and that me being away from you had nothing to do with you not being valuable, you not being worthy, and begin to pour inside of them that love. It's amazing that that once was a dying flower becomes watered and nurtured, and they become alive. Why? Because they now feel love inside of that. And I know that that's important inside of even dealing with this work. One of the things that I really try to do through Destiny by Choice and the Project Siege program that focus on things like PrEP and HIV and educating. One of the things that we really try to do with this is to make sure that people have access. They know where they can go get tested. We even have self test kits. We try to make sure that they understand that we don't come at them from a judgment perspective, because you don't know what you don't know, and
Right.
and so we try to provide education, empowerment to them. We try to get them to understand, listen, you got to love yourself, and loving yourself is protecting yourself, and loving yourself. And so we have to give those type of messages, and those messages are given in many cases that causes a person to value themselves. They realize that I am important, I am better than that, I don't deserve this, I don't deserve that, and they begin to then make the adjustments in their own life. And I like what you said about the fact of everyone doesn't subscribe. In other words, we can have all have the same goals, but different routes to that same goal. You know, uh, everybody is not the gym material. Now, I personally like going to the gym. I know you can't tell it lately these days, but we're gonna fix that. But 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 other people, they like walking, they like jogging, they like doing those type things. Well, guess what? We all have the same goal. We want to be healthy. We
Mm,
want to be fit. We just choose different routes in doing so. So I can't look at someone else and say, "Man, look here, you're slob, man. Well, if you want, man, you got to hit the gym if you're gonna get better." No. That might not be the person. They
right.
might be good at just exercising, walking, jogging, and running, and we have to understand that. So we have to be that type of light in the midst of people, in the midst of their darkness, in their dreary moments of life.
So you mentioned destiny by choice. So
Yes.
so how can tell? I mean, you can tell us like how can people who tell us a little bit more about the services that you have. Well,
Okay.
you give a little bit in the intro, and you touch on a little bit of the stuff. So tell us a little bit more about destiny by choice.
Okay, so Destiny by Choice is basically we run and operate what I call educational and empowerment and group services, individual group services. Some we refer out, others we do inside. So we deal with victims and not only victims but even perpetrators of domestic sexual violence. We provide education and support to that, but we also provide, if you would, education and trainings to municipalities, to organizations and groups that may be you know that may be interested in understanding rights and things about domestic violence and things about their partners. But we do also up on our Project Cease program, which is our program that we do that addresses HIV and AIDS, and we offer there education, uh, things like PrEP. And for those that don't know what PrEP stands for, that's pre-exposure prophylaxis. It is actually, if you would, a medicine people take to prevent infections and diseases that may be
Your phone is muted. Your phone went on mute. Your phone is your mute button is on. Oh, now it's saying that your mic isn't. Yeah, we can't hear you. No, we can't hear you still.
Okay, we're
There you
back
go.
and better than ever. Am
All
I
right.
distorted or do you hear me fine?
We can hear you fine. We can hear you fine.
Okay. So let me say this. What is so very important inside of this is that we continue to provide those services. I was talking about PrEP, pre prophylaxis, and this is, of course, it's a medicine that's given to help prevent a person from getting HIV. And so it is about protecting oneself. So we provide those services. We do a lot of things in the community as far as going out and whether they're many health fairs or going out just raising the awareness about PrEP and HIV and being able to also refer them to services so that people can live a healthy, safe life.
And your website is destinybychoice.org.
Well, it's so interesting. All of a sudden, I hear you, but I can't hear you. It's almost distorted. So I think
Okay.
I know what you said, though, although I'm not a great lip reader.
Your website.
Well, I can't hear it quite as well inside of what you're saying, but
Okay.
yeah, the
Ooh.
sound just kind of became distorted. But as long as you guys can hear me well, that's great. I don't know if you're saying uh, give a closing statement or wrap up or whatever. I'm trying to take off my host hat, so I'm not anticipating.
Just
Yeah.
message.
So I'll check the chat, is what I believe that you're probably saying. Okay. So, yes. So one can reach me by going to our website, www.destinybychoice.org. Destinybychoice.org. You can reach us at area code 561-439-3145. And we're available to do any type of education outreach, uh, uh, addressing HIV, PrEP, domestic violence, sexual violence, uh, the intersection between domestic violence and uh, HIV, as well as mental health and faith. And those are our primary areas that we cover.
Awesome. Is the sound back clearly?
Okay, I'm still getting that same
Okay.
sound, so I'll look at the chat.
All right.
I have no idea what happened. I think we were being interrupted in our signal, and all of a sudden everything changed. Yes. Wow. So the question is, who is my greatest inspiration? And I have to tell you, my greatest inspiration is my mother, my late mother. Uh, it is my late mother, Ollie Thicklin, who was my biggest hero. Her life totally impacted my life. Her faith totally drew me into the life of faith that I now live. She's my greatest inspiration, and in my soon-to-be released book that's coming out, a book that I wrote with 7 other authors. I wrote a particular chapter talking about the redeemed man, but most of that chapter I wrote had to do with my mother's life and how she inspired me. So my greatest inspiration is my mother. Yes. Well, it's my service. My services, for the most part, are free when it comes to serving, if you would, people directly and victims. When I'm doing individual or group counseling, because I refer a lot of that out, sometimes there's a small fee, or there may be what we call a sliding scale. But one thing we do, we don't turn anyone away. All of our HIV, uh, PrEP information, those things are all free. Yes, indeed. And so, but it's been an awesome experience, and actually, learning and meeting more people that's in the field, such as yourself, Richardo. people who have a passion, who have had an expertise inside of it. For me, kind of reemerging back on the especially HIV front, it's been refreshing meeting people who have taken this, as a life work, and it's good to see that type of passion and collaboration and the things that I see the community doing to not only work to make HIV a past thing in Palm Beach County, to not only reduce the, if you would, the transmitting rates, but to actually to empower our communities, and we're seeing that happen. Uh, wow. So, have I met my social impact yet, or is there more? I believe there's always more. I believe as long as I've been doing the work that I do, and many might say, well, you've been around, you made a great impact, you've done a lot of things, and that's probably all true. But I definitely think there's more. I do believe that when it comes to this thing we call life and inside of our work, it's always a continuum. Uh, and I've been deemed a expert when it comes to domestic violence in that area, and expert in things, and I'm known as a subject matter expert. But here's the real deal: I don't believe in necessarily experts. There's a Russian proverb that says, to the expert there's only one answer, but to the student there are many possibilities. And so I'm a possibility thinker. I believe that we can always build on what we know. We can perfect that which we know. And so, once again, you can reach us at www.destinybychoice.org, and you can reach us at 561 3145.
Thank you so much, Pastor Reverend Dr. J.R. Thicklin, for being with us today. We really appreciate you being on the show. Thank you so much. And if you are out there and you are looking for services, please go on to destinybychoice.org, check out their website, access some of their services. And you heard it from Reverend Dr. Thicklin. He is here. He is serving the community. He is open. You can contact them. They services are free. There's a sliding scale. These are resources. We bring these resources to you each and every day of the week, of the year, of the month, just to make sure that our community have those resources. So go get tested, know your HIV status, know about PrEP if it can help to prevent you from getting HIV. And if you are a person living with HIV, go see a provider, get medication, and stay healthier longer. And if you have questions, always feel free to reach out to me. You can find us at Campbell Health Solutions at chs.org or chs.health, I should say. Or you can call us at 561-867-1057. Thank you again. And thank you, Pastor Thicklin. We really appreciate having you. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so very much for having me. I think I could interpret through all of those things. Thanks again. Continue the good work, and appreciate the invite.
Awesome. Thank you.